She was 12 years old. Mary Kellerman woke up on the morning of September 29, 1982, complaining of a sore throat. Her parents did what most parents would do. They reached for the Tylenol. She took one capsule. Moments later, she collapsed to the bathroom floor. By the time paramedics arrived at their suburban Chicago home, Mary was unconscious. A few hours later, she was dead. The official cause? Unknown. But that same morning, in a different part of the city, a man named Adam Janus walked into his local Jewel Osco pharmacy. He too had a headache. He too picked up Tylenol. He went home, took 2 capsules, and dropped dead on the spot. Hours later, his grieving brother and sister-in-law arrived at the house, overcome with emotion. Both took Tylenol to ease their stress. Both collapsed. Both died. 7 people in and around Chicago would die in less than 48 hours. No warning, no connection, no clear motive, just one deadly link. Tylenol. The panic began quietly. In the early afternoon of September 29th, emergency rooms across the Chicago area began reporting sudden deaths with one strange detail in common. All the victims had recently ingested extra-strength Tylenol. Most of them were otherwise healthy. The cases spanned different hospitals, different towns, and different circumstances. There was no single event, no shared meal, no common workplace. But there was Tylenol. Investigators began comparing notes, and as the pieces came together, a horrifying pattern emerged. Someone was poisoning over-the-counter medication. At the time, Tylenol was one of the most trusted brands in America. It was manufactured by McNeil Consumer Products, a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson. With more than 100 million capsules sold every year, Tylenol was the leading pain reliever in the U.S. market. What made it popular was also what made it vulnerable. Tylenol capsules were easy to open. Each capsule was made of 2 parts, filled with powder, then snapped together. They weren't sealed in foil. There were no tamper-proof bottles, no child locks, no plastic wrap. It was a system built entirely on trust. And in late September 1982, someone used that trust to kill. The Janus family tragedy was the turning point. Adam died that morning. His brother Stanley, 25, and sister-in-law Teresa, 19, died later that evening. All 3 had taken Tylenol from the same bottle. When authorities tested the capsules, the results were chilling. They were laced with potassium cyanide, a lethal poison that blocks the body's ability to use oxygen. Death could occur within minutes. Police scrambled to test Tylenol in other households. They found more tainted bottles. Then came another death. Mary McFarland, a 31-year-old mother from Elmhurst, collapsed in her workplace break room after taking Tylenol for a headache. She died before reaching the hospital. Later that night, Paula Prince, a 35-year-old flight attendant, was found dead in her Chicago apartment. Security footage from a nearby Walgreens showed her purchasing the Tylenol that would end her life. She smiled at the cashier. It would be her last recorded moment. The city went into full-scale panic. Tylenol was immediately pulled from shelves. Police officers were dispatched to every pharmacy in the greater Chicago area. They used loudspeakers to warn residents. News anchors urged viewers not to take Tylenol under any circumstances. Stores trashed their entire inventories. Hospitals tested patients for cyanide exposure. Some pharmacies were vandalized by frightened customers. Others saw their shelves stripped bare, not by thieves, but by health inspectors and company reps in hazmat suits. The idea that someone could tamper with a product in such a public, anonymous way was terrifying. No factory errors, no natural contamination, just murder. Johnson & Johnson's response was swift and unprecedented. Within hours of confirming the deaths, the company issued a nationwide recall of 31 million bottles of Tylenol. It cost over $100 million. Executives held daily press conferences. They opened phone lines for customers. They invited the FDA and FBI into their plants. They even offered to exchange capsules for tablets, believed to be safer. Despite the financial risk, Johnson & Johnson put public safety first, and it paid off. While the brand suffered in the short term, the company was widely praised for its transparency, cooperation, and accountability. It became a case study in crisis management. But while the company scrambled to contain the fallout, police were trying to find a killer. The working theory was that the poisonings did not occur at the factory. Instead, investigators believed the capsules had been tampered with after distribution, pulled from shelves, laced with cyanide, and returned to stores. That meant the killer was local. They likely moved between different suburbs, planting poisoned bottles at random. But there were no fingerprints, no security cameras in most stores, no eyewitnesses, no motive. Just 7 innocent victims and a handful of tainted bottles. Hundreds of tips poured in. Dozens of suspects were questioned. None were arrested. Until police received a letter. It was postmarked from Chicago and demanded $1 million to stop the Tylenol killings. The writer threatened further attacks if the money wasn't paid. The letter was signed, James W. Lewis. Authorities traced the letter to a man in New York City. Lewis had a long criminal history, fraud, extortion, and mental health issues. He'd once been a suspect in an unrelated murder case. He claimed he had nothing to do with the actual poisonings and had simply written the letter to exploit the crisis. He was charged with extortion, not murder, and served 13 years in federal prison. But no one, not then, and not in the 4 decades since, has ever been officially charged with the Tylenol murders. The case remains unsolved. The impact, however, was immediate and permanent. In response to the killings, the U.S. government passed the Federal Anti-Tampering Act of 1983, making it a federal crime to tamper with consumer products. Manufacturers adopted tamper-evident packaging, foil seals, plastic wraps, and breakaway caps. Capsules fell out of favor. Tablets became the norm. And every time you open a medicine bottle today, every time you crack a seal or peel back a foil strip, you're seeing the legacy of the Tylenol murders. The victims' families were left shattered. Mary Kellerman was buried with her favorite stuffed animal. The Janus family buried 3 loved ones in a single day. Paula Prince's final purchase, captured forever on that Walgreens security camera, became one of the most haunting images of the case. There was no justice, just silence, and the quiet, lingering fear that someone, somewhere, had killed at random and walked away. Over the years, new theories emerged. Some believed the killer had a grudge against Johnson & Johnson. Others speculated it was a test, a trial run for future product tampering. A few even suspected someone inside the supply chain, but no definitive proof ever surfaced. Even the man most often linked to the crime, James W. Lewis, was never convicted of murder. He died in July 2023, still denying involvement. The FBI closed the case without resolution. The Tylenol murders were more than a tragedy. They were a national trauma. They changed how America buys, stores, and trusts consumer products. They ended an era of innocence and launched an age of suspicion. But more than that, they were a reminder that sometimes the most devastating acts of violence don't involve bombs or bullets. Sometimes they come in a bottle. Thank you for listening to Road to Ruins. Subscribe for more true stories where systems fail and people pay the price.